all who have gathered here. I, Shivani Rai, President of Civil Society, extend a very hearty welcome to our Honorable and renowned Chief Guest, Mr. Anil Swarup sir, respected Principal Dr. Gurmohinder Singh sir, our esteemed Convener Dr. Gopinath Pillai sir, our HOD Dr. Indrajit Singh sir. I would also like to welcome our respected faculty members and amicable audience for gracing and adding lustre to this webinar on importance of ethics in public administration organized by civil society. Civil society is an academic society of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Khalsa College formed by the student of the college to promote awareness among the student about social, political and geopolitical scenarios in India. In pursuit of this endeavor, the society is actively engaged in promoting and spreading political literacy by holding various conferences, seminars by renowned speakers, and debates and group discussions are held on a regular basis. Now, I feel profusely elated to welcome our distinguished convener, Dr. Gopinath Pillai sir, and I request him to kindly start the session with his words of wisdom and encouragement. Over to you, sir.
Good evening to all of you. Sir, I am Dr. Gopinath Pillai, the faculty and also convener for this. This is civil society, as she said, it's all managed by the students themselves. It's an attempt so that they become good organizers, because you are a careered civil servant, so you know how important it is. Organization is the most important part of all administration. So we encourage them to do everything. And if there are any shortfalls, you should please guide them. If there are any shortfalls, we apologize for that on behalf of the students. But they are quite trained by now to conduct these programs. So I was very, very elated when I heard your name, because we all know you very well. And this being the celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, I think this topic, ethics, becomes central to all of us. Today, if you ask me, the country is facing a serious ethical crisis. Look around anywhere. I think there cannot be a second opinion on this, that we are all facing a crucial ethical crisis. And public administration is directly in contact with the people. I think it is public administration which is the bridge between the state and the civil society. And it's of paramount importance that public administration, public administrators value ethics and morality. I'm trying to use these two terms for the moment interchangeably. Sir, I would like to, I have always felt, quite disappointed. We always talk of nation building. I have never heard people talking about character building. You cannot build nations without building character. Very few people have theorized on character building. You cannot build nation unless you build characters. And this is the blunder that the whole world today is showing. And that is why we are suffering so badly. Look at the politics. Look at politics. Look at the social tensions that we are facing today. Be it international or be it the local politics. Take the UP elections for a matter. So that is the importance of ethics that I keep telling my students, that unless you practice ethics in life, neither you would be at peace, nor the society would be at peace. And I'm so glad that you chose this subject, because you were probably implementing public policy in practice, and you will have come across the challenges of ethical values more than what we have, because although we have surveys and we do take our classes outside the classroom, but definitely I cannot be as experienced as you are as far as the field experience is concerned, because you people are working on the field every day implementing public policies, and you must have faced these ethical and moral challenges. So I don't want to stand in between you and the students, but I was really overwhelmed when these students came to me and said that you would be, Shri Anil Swarup ji would be talking on ethics. I grabbed it. I said, Amrit Mahotsav, we cannot celebrate if we don't discuss this crisis which we are facing, the crisis of ethics. So Shivani, I hand it over to you so that sir will now elaborate on his experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for starting this session on a really good note. Now, I feel expertly and joyful to announce that to deliver the talk, we have the person who truly justifies the saying that ethics must begin at the top of an organization. It's a leadership issue, and the chief executive must set the example. In his own words, ethics cannot be taught. One can imbibe them and emulate them. And ethical action is mandated by nature and approved by society as right and appropriate. We feel extremely overwhelmed by having you, sir, as our speaker for today. I once again wholeheartedly welcome you and thank you so much for accepting our invitation and consenting to be with us today. Mr. Anil Swarup, sir, is an Indian author and retired Indian administrative officer of Uttar Pradesh cadre in 1981. In his 38 years of career, he has served in various capacities.
Shivani, we can save on time. You can avoid that. We can get down to business, because I'm really charged by the opening remarks made by Mr. Pillai. I think let's spare the audience of what I have done. What I haven't done, that's the past. Let's discuss the future. Thank you very much for inviting me here to interact with youngsters, and compliments to the organization for having selected this fabulous topic of ethics. I love talking about it. And I'm really charged, as I said, by the opening remarks of Mr. Pillai, his humility and his emphasis on issues which are very close to my heart. I think the point that he mentioned regarding character building is phenomenal. Today, but we can do a lot to ourselves. It's easy to preach others or what the nation should do, what others should do, what society should do, what I can do for the nation. But I totally agree with Mr. Pillai when he says that you can't serve the nation until you serve yourself. So you have to be involved as an individual to be reckoned with. The book that I wrote recently, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, ends with a couplet. खुद ही कुकर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से कुछ पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. To me, that is the essence of human existence. Until you evolve as an individual to be reckoned with, all rest of it is nonsense. Now, I'm not going to talk about how you evolve as an individual. Maybe on some other day, I can come and explain to you how you can actually evolve as an individual to be reckoned with. That's a separate matter. But today, I'll be talking about ethics. Ethics as I personally witnessed it. Ethics as I personally experienced it. I mean, I'm so glad Mr. Pillai said what he said. I'm not a theoretician. I'm not an expert. I'm not a Jnani Purush. I'm a practitioner. So whatever I'm going to tell you is something which I practice myself. It's not that whatever I did during the course of my career was correct, right? When I reflect on it, some of it I think was not correct. And as I say in my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, I have given about 70 instances of such ethical dilemmas that I faced. And it is not in all those cases that I did what I was right. In fact, at the end of each chapter, you'll find a question or questions questioning what I did. And I'll allude to some of them. But before I start and explain to you my journey of ethics, let me delve into a bit of a theory part of it. What I understand as ethics, and it may be at variance with your understanding of ethics. Ethics, very simply speaking, since I was also a student of political science, I have read all the philosophies about ethics. I'm not going to delve into that. I believe in simplifying complex concepts, and to me, ethics very simply is what I deem to be right or wrong, period. That's ethics. The difference between, as again Mr. Pillai pointed out, between morality and ethics is morals are my personal value systems, which may be at variance with some of what society accepts. When we talk of ethics, we are talking of such values which have been accepted by a society. They are different from laws. Certain values of the society, accepted by the society, when they get codified, they become laws. But not all values or ethical values are codified as law. And what I'll be talking today is not the law part. If you violate a law, you'll be punished, period. I'm going to talk about the values which are not codified. And what it takes to have those values and practice those values, because the essence of my book, Ethical Dilemmas, is that ethical behavior pays. You know, as Mr. Pillai pointed out, the crisis that I see around us is an account of the fact that we have not been able to sufficiently demonstrate that people who follow ethical values have succeeded in life. Normally, we start believing that honest officers have suffered. There can't be anything much worse than that. It is not so. You know, as many honest officers have suffered as have dishonest. But we talk of honest officers suffering. We don't talk about dishonest officers suffering. I can give you an example or a couple of them. 2 former chief secretaries of state of UP were sent to jail on account of dishonest or unethical behavior. No one talks about that. But if an honest officer suffers somewhere, you talk about it. As against that, you find a lot many honest officers doing extremely well in life. We don't look towards them. We look at the failures, not the success. So what I'm going to tell you today is how you can see success in ethical behavior. That's the proposition that I've promoted in my book, that ethical behavior pays. It is practical to be honest. But it's not easy. It's not easy to be honest. It is not even easy to be dishonest, let me tell you that. A price has to be paid whether you're honest or dishonest. The beauty is that the choice is yours. You have a choice to decide whether you want to be honest or dishonest, whether you want to pursue an ethical behavior or an unethical behavior. So it's very critical for you to decide. Now, I have a request to make to all of you. You know, I'm not a professional speaker, so I find it difficult to speak to a laptop. You know, if I can see some faces in front of me, if you can open your videos, because at least I'll get to know whether what I'm saying is making any sense to you or not, or I'm just speaking to a wall and getting my words back. I'm thankful to Shivani, Mahi, Lavjeet and Charu to have opened the videos. I'm so glad. See, I want to chat with you. It should not be a monologue that I'm just speaking out on a radio or a television show. I don't really know which audience is going to look at it. I'm talking to youngsters. And let me tell you, I also feel inspired talking to people like you. You are youngsters full of energy. I imbibe a lot of energy from people like you. So I would like to see your faces if you can. It's in the afternoon, early morning, I can understand you still woken up, you're not combed your hair and you don't want to be seen. But let me tell you, friends, if you don't want to face people, and if you can't face people, how are you going to succeed in life? Okay, so what I was saying was that the value system that a person has may vary from individual to individual. In fact, 2 brothers can have different value system. One may be a vegetarian, the other may be non-vegetarian. 2 families may have a different set of value systems. 2 countries may have different value system. So it is, again, as I write in my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, ethical issues are not frozen in space and time and geographies. Even ethical values change over a period of time. For example, a person non-vegetarian becomes a vegetarian over a period of time. So the value system undergoes a change. Look at Germany. In the 1930s, late 1930s, Germany had different value system. They followed Nazism. Today you go to Germany, they condemn it. So means that they change. So again, what I'm trying to point out here is, whatever I'm going to call as my value system may be different from your value system. But the beauty is that you have to take a call whether you want to follow this or that. Now, when I joined the civil service, I was like any youngster, is full of passion, want to do things, but you go with prejudices also. And that impacts your value system. So when I joined the civil service, I was of the view that all the problems in the country are on account of politicians. And whenever a politician came to meet me, I used to look at him with, a lot of disdain that he's the guy responsible. But over a period of time, I realized there are a large number of outstanding politicians in this country. And I've had the privilege of working with many of them, Mr. Kalyan Singh being one of them. I'll narrate a few incidents with him, which tested my ethical value system. I worked with Mr. Prakash Javadekar. I worked with Mr. �𝐀𝐧𝐢𝐥. I worked with Mr. Oscar Fernandez, late Mr. Oscar Fernandez, all belonging to different political parties, but outstanding people. There are as many good people in politics as there are outside, because politicians emerge out of this society. Now, the theme that I'm going to run through my entire talk would be that I couldn't do much to a politician, but I could do a lot to myself. Did I evolve as an individual to get the best out of the situation given to me? Because I couldn't change the set of circumstances, but I could change myself to get the best out of circumstances. My friends, I keep saying this because we are fond of, umr bhar yahi bhool karta raha ghalib, dhool chehre pe thi, aina malta raha. We have this habit of blaming others for what we are. And my suggestion to all youngsters, and I talk to youngsters quite regularly, almost every alternative day, and I keep telling them, forget about others. Focus on yourself. Even if others are blamed for your miseries, you can't do much to them, but you can do a lot to yourself. If you look at the success stories around the world, guys who made it ultimately were those that they could do to themselves. Yes, ultimately they changed the world also a bit. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's very practical, actually. The beauty about Mahatma Gandhi as we celebrate 75 years of independence is that he was a very practical man. He was not talking through the roof, no. And he practiced what he said. You can't be practical until you would have practiced what he said. So when I joined the civil service, I ran into these problems. But there were many other dilemmas that I faced. I remember I was a young subdivision magistrate posted in a district called Hardoi. In 1984, there was this unfortunate incident of Indira Gandhi being assassinated, late Srimati Indira Gandhi being assassinated. In the subdivision or in the district, all hell broke loose. Members of a particular community were being harassed by ruling party people. And it was difficult to stop it, but I tried my best. And I spent sleepless nights, and I also got a feedback that one of the ruling party MLAs, who was a very powerful MLA, was behind all these attacks and incendiary activities. So I was in a dilemma whether I should take action or not. Now, why I call it an ethical dilemma? Because if I didn't take any action against him, nothing would have happened. It was not illegal not to take action against him. And if I had taken action against him, that also was not illegal. So law doesn't come here in picture. Throughout my talk today, I'll talk about something beyond law. What is mandated under law, you have to do in any case. But if I had not taken any action, nothing would have happened against me. So I decided to take action against him. I decided that I will not allow this nonsense to continue. So what did I do? I made out a National Security Act case and sent it to the district magistrate. The deciding authority for an NSA case is the district magistrate, so I sent it across to him. Now this MLA got very upset because he was so powerful that he could never imagine that someone would have the courage to make out a paper against him. So what did he do? He went to the state headquarters and complained at the highest level. I was summoned to Lucknow. Lucknow was about 2 hours drive from Hardoi, so I drove down to her. And I met a senior officer who asked me a question. Anil, yaar, why did you make this case against the MLA G? G is when you respect somebody, you say MLA G. That stupid rascal, I would have thrown him into the jail if I had my way. But anyway, so I explained to him, sir, this is the reason. So he agreed with me because I had good grounds of making that case. But he still said, nahi Anil yaar, uski file वापस ले लो. I hope all of you understand Hindi. I mean, I will be using some Hindi phrases in between because sometimes, in translation, the message gets lost. So he said, yaar, wo वापस ले लो file tum. So I thought over it, another dilemma for me. If I took the file back, nothing illegal. If I left the file, nothing. There's no law here. These were ethical issues, whether it is right of me to take the file back. So I told him, sir, the decision maker is the district magistrate. I don't think it will send the right signal if I recall the file. Let him reject my case. And with these words, the meeting ended. Obviously, he was upset. I came to my district, and sure enough, within 24 hours, I was transferred out. Now, I was a young officer at that point in time. I felt terrible. I said, I did the right thing and I paid a price. Why am I telling you all this? Gradually, as I'll explain to you, that results are not under our control. We keep talking about karmanne vadika raste ma phele chuka dachana, but we don't follow it at all. We are more concerned about results. At that point in time, I was very upset, but I was transferred out, so I went and joined wherever I had to join. Fast track this by 8 years. I was then district magistrate of a full district, a district called 𝐿akhimpuर Kheri. During those days, there was this Ram Janmabhoomi agitation going on, so the situation was very tense. But fortunately, in my district, it was under control. I didn't have to impose curfew, whereas curfew was imposed in all the surrounding districts. Here, because people believe that this district magistrate is very strict, any wrong anyone does, he'll put him behind the bars. But what happened was one person was murdered. And the president or district president of the ruling party wanted to take out a funeral procession. Now, permitting to take a funeral procession would not have been illegal. Not permitting also would not have been illegal. So law was not involved. I had to take a call. And the call was that if I allowed that to happen, there will be riots in this district. So I requested him. I tried to convince him, but he didn't. He said, we'll take it out. Then I arrested him. I arrested the district. There I had just moved a file for MLA, not arrested him. Here I had arrested the district president and put him behind the bars. I told my wife, given this environment in this state, I will be transferred, so be prepared. She was also prepared. Fine. Late in the night at 10 o'clock, the chief minister rang me up. DM साहब आपने हमारे अध्यक्ष जी को बंद कर दिया. मैंने कहा हाँ सर बंद तो किया है. क्यों किया? तो I explained to him. उनको छोड़ नहीं सकते. मैंने कहा साहब छोड़ेंगे तो यहाँ बवाल होगा. सरकार आपकी है या लॉ एंड ऑर्डर की सिचुएशन बन जाएगी. कोई और रास्ता बताइए. So then I told him, sir, either you speak to him and convince him that it is your own government. By taking out this procession, there will be law and order problem. He was not convinced. He banged the phone down. I couldn't make out. So I said, ठीक है, कल दूसरी जगह चलेंगे कहीं. Next morning, I get a call that that gentleman who was wanting to take out a procession has agreed not to take out a procession. I was surprised. Okay, I released him. I had nothing personal against him. And after 2 months, the same chief minister awarded me as one of the finest district magistrate in the state. Now, my young friends, why am I telling you all this? I'm juxtaposing these two events that happened in my career. And both are elaborate details are there. If you want to read ethical dilemmas of a civil servant, they're there. In one case, I was so-called punished in the sense of being transferred, though my entire understanding of transfer underwent a change later on. And in this instance, I was being rewarded. And I was gradually becoming convinced what my mother used to tell me, that you have absolutely no control over results. The only control that you have is on what you are doing, nothing beyond. So when you are doing, first, you enjoy those moments. Second, live in those moments. Don't worry about the consequences so long you do what you think is right. Now, I'm jumping a few, chronologically, because the details, as I said, are there in 70 incidents in my book, and each one raises a new type of ethical dilemmas or ethical issue. I had done a stint in Delhi and was back in Lucknow, and I was posted as Secretary Horticulture. And my minister was very corrupt, very corrupt. So one day, after 15 days of my joining, he sent me a written order signed by him asking me to suspend the deputy director. No reason was assigned. But the minister had the legal authority to suspend the officer of that level. So what he was doing was not illegal. But since there was no explanation given, I rang him up. I asked him, sir, आपने उनको suspend करने को कहा है, क्या बात हो गई? He said, वो मुझसे मिलने नहीं आया. Now, I was a bit surprised. There's too small a reason for a person to be suspended. So the conversation ended there. I just told him, sir, I'll ask him to meet you, sir. It's just too small an issue. So I found out about this officer and I got to know that he's a very fine officer, efficient, honest. So I wondered, why did he not go to meet the minister? I rang up this officer. I asked him, यार तुम मिलने क्यों नहीं गए? मंत्री जी बड़े नाराज हैं, मुझसे सस्पेंड करने को कह रहे हैं तुम्हें. तो what he told me surprised me. He said, sir, मैं उनसे कई बार मिल चुका हूँ, लेकिन जैसे वो मिलना चाह रहे हैं मैं नहीं मिल पा रहा हूँ. Now those from UP will understand this. I don't know how many of you. You know, in my book, I have spoken about 3 types of corruption: Nazrana, Shukrana, Jabrana. Now, I'm not going to elaborate on this. Some of you who know Urdu will understand what it means. But this minister wanted Nazrana in the sense, like Nazrana, you go to temple and you offer to Lord Almighty in the hope that if you have some trouble sometime, the Almighty will help you. Okay. So he wanted some Nazrana, and this guy said, sir, मेरे पास पैसा है नहीं देने को और मैं दे नहीं पाऊंगा. Now, next dilemma before me. Now, here is a legitimate order legitimate in the sense of legal order, not legitimate, legal order by the minister. And here is an officer who's not at fault. How do I save him? You know, right through my talk, you will discern that I was always optimistic. I indeed was positive and optimistic. I was always. But there were occasions where I was also down and out. And this was one such occasion. I felt terrible that here is an officer who's honest and efficient, and how do I save him? And you know, when you are depressed, then the poet in you comes out. No, how many of you are poets? Many of you would be. So I wrote these lines, and this was way back in 2003. I wrote these lines. Sanshay nahi man mein, sanshay is doubt. Sanshay nahi man mein, teri srishti mein ya tujh mein. तू ही तू मेरे मन में समाया, सब कुछ मैंने तुझसे है पाया. फिर भी स्तब्ध हूं, व्याकुल हूं, अशांत हूं, शायद अनजान हूं. क्या यही जीवन है? जो पापी है, दुराचारी है, क्यों जीत रहा निरंतर? स्पष्ट करो, अभिव्यक्त करो, कुछ तो करो मेरे राम. मैंने अपनी वेदना राम की झोली में डाल दी. जब आप परेशान होते हैं, राम को ढूंढते हैं ना, उनकी झोली में डाल देते हैं. But if you are an optimist, the answer comes to you like this. And it came like this. समय रुका नहीं, हम क्यों ठहर गए? समय रुका नहीं, हम क्यों ठहर गए? अभी तो हम चले भी नहीं, फिर क्यों थक गए? उठो पथिक, पथिक इज अ ट्रैवलर. उठो पथिक, मत भ्रमित हो, दू मिल अंधियारे में. श्रेष्ठ वही जो घिरा नहीं हो क्षणिक निराशा में. जागो जगाओ, मन मत बहलाओ, एक मसीहा तुम भी बन जाओ. You know, these are inspiring. I have used this lines in both of my books, not just a civil servant and ethical dilemmas of civil servant. Even today, these lines inspire me. It came. So what did I do? I searched into laws and regulations, and I came across a provision that if I disagreed with the minister, I could route the file through the chief secretary. Chief secretary is the top bureaucrat in the state. I had worked with the chief secretary earlier. I rang him up and told him the entire background. So he said, yaar, aisa karo, file mujhe bhej do, phir dekhte hain. Now here I was trying to buy time, because the provision is that after chief secretary's note, the minister can still overrule. But what chief secretary did was, he kept the file with him, he didn't send it to the minister at all. So whereas there was an order to suspend the officer, the order was not issued because file was sitting with the chief secretary. But this minister was smart. So instead of pursuing with the chief secretary, he went and met the chief minister. I don't know what transpired between the two of them, but I was transferred out. Now, my chief secretary, he was very upset. He called me, yaar dekho, us adhikari ko bachane ke chakkar mein tumhara transfer ho gaya. Now, by this time, my understanding of transfer had undergone total change. So when he was upset, I said, kyun pareshan hote hain, sir? Sir, for a civil servant, transfer is like death. It is inevitable. जो होना है सर, उसके लिए परेशान क्या होना? और सर, वैसे भी मैं हिंदू फिलॉसफी में विश्वास करता हूं. I will be reborn. You'll post me somewhere else. You're not throwing me out of the service. So he started smiling. So I got posted. You know, now the point that I'm trying to make here is, it's not a cost or a price that I was paying. I was prepared for that. It was beyond me. I was happy, as I write in my book, that I adhered to the call of my conscience. And I enjoy those moments. There are many such moments. I call them my Bharat Ratnas in my book, which when I narrate, and I'll narrate some more given the time here, which still give me goosebumps that I did what I thought was right and I stood by it. So I got transferred out. I got transferred to a state finance corporation, which was making losses for 7 years. My job was to wind it up. So when I walked into that lovely building, it's a wonderful building there in Lucknow, I felt like walking into a graveyard, because almost everyone there thought that I would come to take their job away because it was going to be wound up. I was also a bit upset. Now, again, to cut a long story short, because it's a long chapter in my book, I was upset and I was trying to find a way out, and I got an idea. I tell you, if you're positive in your thinking, if you have a belief in yourself, you will find more solutions to the problem who doesn't have a belief in himself. Let me tell you very clearly. So I found some idea, and I shared that idea with all 300 officers at the headquarters, and everyone agreed, "Haan sir, ye to bahut acha idea hai. No one had thought about it. It can work." Now, for that idea to work, I called what I did was, very briefly, what the problem was, that this corporation was borrowing money from someone, SIDBI, and lending it to industrialists. Now, since they were finding it difficult to recover from industrialists, they were entering into a one-time settlement, writing off all interest and settling the amount only for principal. And to the creditors, that is SIDBI, they were paying interest. So those of you who understand financial management will understand that this was creating havoc to the balance sheet and causing. My suggestion was, how about reversing it? How about asking SIDBI to write off interest and getting some interest from the debtors? Now, this was easier said than done. So what I did was, I rang up Managing Director SIDBI, and after doing my homework, we owed 250 crores to SIDBI, out of which 70 crores was principal and 180 crores was interest. So I asked him, "Mr. So-and-so, will you please write off my interest if I pay you principal?" He said, "How can I do that?" Now, I had done my homework. I told him, "You do the same way as you did for 15 other private sector entities where you wrote off interest and just took principal." But they were private sector entities. So I used Lucknowi bhasha. I told him, "हम में कांटे लगे हैं क्या? अगर if you can do it for private sector, why don't you do it for me?" बोले, "अरे आपका कैसे कर देंगे?" तो मैंने कहा, आपने मेरे बारे में शायद रिसर्च नहीं की. Before I joined the IS, I was in the police service. 2 of my batchmates are in CBI. They are deputy directors there. All I have to do is to write a letter to them, merely indicating that this guy has written off interest for 15 private sector entities. My grounds are the same, but he's not writing off my interest. अरे कैसी बात कर रहे हैं? मैं आपको अच्छा 2 दिन में बताता हूँ. और 2 दिन छोड़ दीजिए, अगले दिन सुबह उसका फोन आ गया. बोले, अगर आप प्रिंसिपल हमें दे दीजिए तो हम आपका इंटरेस्ट माफ कर देंगे. Now this was unthinkable at that point in time. Now I didn't have a single penny. 70 crore तो बहुत बड़ी चीज है, मेरे को पैसा ही नहीं था. Then I went to finance secretary. Now in my book, I'm questioning myself, because what I did to Managing Director SIDBI was certainly unethical. It was not illegal. I threatened him, and I reflect upon it. Perhaps I may not have done it. Something else could have been done. But I met the finance secretary, and then I told her, "Madam, all the loan that the corporation has taken has been guaranteed by the state government. If you don't pay that money to SIDBI, they can go to court and attach your treasuries and get that money." Then she says, "Haan Anil, the problem is very serious. What can we do?" Then I told her, "Madam, मैंने कर लिया." क्या किया आपने? मैंने उनसे बात कर ली MD से, वो तैयार हैं to write off 180 crores if we give them 70 crores. You couldn't believe it. By the next day, or maybe day thereafter, I got about 27 crores from the government. I immediately paid it to SIDBI, and we got an interest subvention of about 54 crores. Balance sheet to itne mein hi theek ho gayi. But I wanted to collect the remaining amount of 70 crores. For that, I did a bit of unethical, you can call it. I called the most corrupt general manager for a cup of tea. ये चाय पे चर्चा नई चीज नहीं है, पहले उसे हम कहते थे over a cup of tea. But why did I call the most corrupt general manager? Because by that time I had realized that almost all corrupt officers are very efficient. Because if they're not efficient, they will be behind the bars. The question is whether I can guide him to become honest. So I called him for a cup of tea. I said, यार ये बताओ इस संस्था में तो कुछ बचा है नहीं, तुम चूसोगे क्या? No, these are all Hindi language, Lucknowi language. Oh, घड़ोड़ा गया. Because no matter how corrupt you are, you'll never admit to be corrupt. No, how many of you are corrupt? Can you raise your hand? Anyone? No one says that he's corrupt. Yet everyone talks about corruption. He said, सर कैसी बात कर रहे हैं? मैंने कहा देखो यार ऐसा बीती ताही बिसार दे आगे की सुध ले. आप जो हुआ वो हुआ, अब आप हमें हेल्प कीजिए. You heard me. We want to revive this organization. Again, to cut a long story short, this guy put his heart and soul together. And the company made profits. Good profits that year. And since it made profits, someone else wanted to come in my place. In UP, the only industry flourishing at that time was transfer industry. So I was transferred out again. It didn't really matter to me. I got out, I had done my job, whatever I did. But I kept track of this officer, this general manager, this corrupt general manager. And people used to tell me, sir, वो इतना ईमानदार हो गया ना, एक पैसा लेता है ना देता है, लगा रहता है account. So I called him over a cup of tea again, this time to my residence. And I said, यार तुम्हारी बहुत लोग तारीफ करते हैं, ये तुम्हारा हृदय परिवर्तन कैसे हुआ? How did you change? So he said, sir, जब आप 300 लोगों के सामने मेरी पीठ थपथपा के कहते थे कि इस संस्था में जो सुधार हो रहा है वो इसकी वजह से हो रहा है, सर मेरी छाती चौड़ी हो जाती थी और जो किक मुझे उस समय मिलती थी वो मुझे पहले कभी नहीं मिली. My friends, I have used the word kick on a number of occasions in my book. And each one of you and I will have to discover our own kick. What is a kick? Which makes you feel good from inside. You all, when you see a good thing, when you listen to good music, when you help somebody without expecting anything in return, you get that kick from inside. Each one of us has experienced that. But unfortunately, we don't recall those kicks. We don't replicate and scale those kicks to revel in those kicks. I am almost completing 4 years of my retirement, and I still, when I recall those kicks, I love those moments. And that gives you the strength to continue to be ethical. Because unless you find value in being ethical, सिर्फ ज्ञान बांटने से, भाषण देने से कि तुम्हें ये करना चाहिए नहीं होगा. You have to perceive it from the depth of your heart yourself. You have to perceive the necessity of it. As I said, I can keep going on and on and on, but I'd like to interact with you. So I will conclude with one more incident, because I have, I can speak for 24 hours on that. I've written 2 books, so I can go on and on. But one more incident I must narrate to you before I conclude and throw open this session for interaction. And during interaction, probably more incidents will come to your understanding. I came back to Delhi and we started this scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, the National Health Insurance Scheme, which has now morphed into Ayushman Bharat. It was arguably the biggest health insurance scheme in the world. We had a lot of problems to begin with, but it came to be recognized world over as one of the finest health insurance schemes. So around that time, Barack Obama had taken over as president of the US, and the US was facing serious crisis in health sector. So one of his advisors rang me up, and he wanted me to make a presentation in Washington. So I tried to wriggle out. I said, ours is a different system, India is a different country, what can I tell you? But he insisted. So during my next visit to Washington, I used to visit there to interact with the World Bank people. I had the occasion to visit Brookings Institute, which houses the advisors of the president. And there I made a presentation on this health insurance scheme that was being run in India. After the presentation that I made, I came out and I was having a cup of tea. So a representative of Bill Gates Foundation who was there during the presentation. You heard of Bill Gates Foundation? Okay, so he walked up to me. He said, Mr. Swarup, you seem to be very passionate about the scheme. What is the government giving you beyond your salary? Now, whether I am passionate or not is not illegal, not legal. But it's your own value system. Why are you passionate about things? I was very passionate. So I asked him a counter question. I didn't have an immediate. I asked him a counter question. I asked him, Gates Foundation gives millions of dollars to poor countries. What do you get out of it? He said, well, Mr. Swarup, that's a job, but we derive a lot of satisfaction out of helping the poor people. I said, you answered your own question. The Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana is meant for the poorest of the poor, many of whom would have been dead, but for the scheme. So the good wishes of those that survived and their families come back to me somehow anyhow. That's good enough a kick for me to do what I am doing. I use that word kick from the general manager here. And then I narrated an incident to him. just to illustrate what I meant by cake. I explained to him that I was visiting a hospital, and I used to visit these small hospitals that were empaneled under the scheme. And I was talking to a patient. To him, I narrated in English. To you, I'll narrate in the language that this entire thing happened. So I was talking to a patient who was a beneficiary under the scheme. Suddenly, I heard a very feeble voice from behind. Beta idhar aao. Very feeble. I turned around. I saw a very old lady who would not sit. She was so frail, so old. She was just calling me here and flashing the smart card. This was a smart card based scheme. I went to her and bent down and asked her, "Mata ji, aap theek to hain?" वो बोली, बेटा मैं बहुत तकलीफ में हूं, लेकिन इन अस्पताल वालों ने मेरा बड़ा ख्याल रखा है। मेरे से पैसे भी नहीं लेते, मेरे पास है नहीं देने को पैसे इनके पास, लेकिन मुझसे पैसे नहीं लेते ये। मैंने कहा, माता जी आप बिल्कुल चिंता ना कीजिए, आपको कोई पैसे देने की जरूरत नहीं है, आपका इलाज यहाँ होगा, आप ठीक होंगे, आप अपने घर जाएंगी। नहीं बेटा, मेरा तो कोई घर नहीं, मैं तो भीख मांगती थी। मैं बीमार पड़ गई तो मेरा पड़ोसी था, वो भी भीख मांगता था, वो झोपड़ी में उधर ही रहता था। उसने तुम्हारा एक कार्ड देखा और ये कार्ड से मेरे साथ यहाँ ले आया, अस्पताल में मुझे भर्ती करा दिया, ये सब मेरी देखभाल कर रहा है। देन आई अगेन सेड, माता जी आप ठीक हो जाएंगे। नहीं बेटा, मेरी तो उम्र इतनी है, ना मेरा कोई बेटा है ना भाई, मेरा तो कोई नहीं इस दुनिया में, अब मेरी उम्र इतनी हो गई, अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊंगी। एंड दिस कैरीड ऑन फॉर 5-10 मिनट्स। आई ट्राई टू कन्विंस हर, आप ठीक हो जाओगे, मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊंगी। एंड देन शी मेड अ वेरी रिमार्केबल स्टेटमेंट। शी टेल्स मी, बेटा ऊपर वाले जाके एक बात जरूर कहूंगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है। नाउ when I narrate this, I get these goosebumps just now. As I said earlier, I call them my Bharat Ratnas. So my friends, it's your ethical behavior. And ethical behavior does not mean that you have to do something as per the rule, which in any case you have to do. It is beyond the rules that you can follow and pursue the values that you have and derive sense of satisfaction out of it. That's the most important part. If you're not deriving satisfaction out of what you're doing, then just being ethical will not help, because you won't be able to sustain. Sustenance comes from your pleasures or satisfactions or the happiness that you derive out of a particular action. So, as I keep saying, there is a chapter in my book that being honest alone is not enough. It's your duty to be honest. If you're dishonest, you'll be caught and you'll be behind the bars. But you have to be efficient along with it. You can't just be honest. I know of so many officers who are just honest, who think they are the only honest persons around and rest of them are all dishonest, and they are unable to do anything. Your job is not merely to be honest. Your job is to deliver on the ground. And that is for me ethics. Your job is not only to do it yourself, your job is also to support the team around you. That is, to me, is ethics. To me, ethics is evolving as a leader, as an individual to be reckoned with. Because if you do that, you'll be recognized. If you don't do that, the chances you may still be recognized. And I keep telling my colleagues, your true worth will be determined after you retire. Because when you are sitting in a position, everyone will appreciate you. But when you're not there, which I'm discovering now, I'm in the process of writing my third book, No More a Civil Servant, where I'm trying to demonstrate that how happy I am, how thoroughly enjoying am I my post-retirement existence because of what I earned during my career. Today, if I call up any officer who's worked with me, immediately he'll follow up whatever I tell him. Well, I don't have any control over anybody now. But the response that I get from people who were around me is phenomenal. I think that's what you earn. That's why I say ethical behavior is worth living. It pays. And I'm a beneficiary of that payment. Thank you very much. As I said, I can keep talking because talking is the easiest thing to do. Walking is difficult. These days, I'm only talking and I love talking. And if I get an audience like yours, it's even better. And thank you very much for inviting me here. As I said, I would have carried on, but I would rather interact with you, respond to your questions than talking one way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an enlightening and insightful session. I am 100% sure that all the participants here in this meeting and on YouTube Live are moved by this session, and I can guarantee that. And, the way, despite of all the difficulties that you have encountered in your journey, the way you moved forward and overcame all of that and are sitting here and delivering this talk, it's appreciable. It takes me back to one couplet I once read. It was, by I think Allama Iqbal. It says, "Tu shahi hai, parwaaz hai kaam tera, tere saamne aasman aur bhi hai." So that's commendable. So moving forward, we'll now take up the questions. A few participants have dropped the questions in the chat box. I'll read them out to you. Mahi is asking, Shivani Bhargava is asking a question. She says, how do civil servants handle issues at the village or district level where the local customs, sensibilities, and beliefs of people contravene human rights or constitutional provisions? For example, women are asked to cover their heads or girls not being educated.
You know, I came across similar situations. You have to handle that as an officer. There again, your conscience has to be your guide. Women wearing hijab, if I was sitting there, I would allow them in the college. Unless there is a specific rule banning them from entering wearing a hijab. If there's no rule, I have no business to stop. I can only stop only such people which, if there is a dress code, a written dress code, and if that dress code does not allow hijab, then I'll try and convince them, it's a dress code, I am helpless, you have to follow that code. It's as simple as that. I cannot evolve my own codes sitting there. What is going on right now in the country, I don't want to comment on that. I feel sad because since you narrate that, today when I talk of ethics, it becomes very difficult to make people understand what ethics is, because if you can have a Supreme Court judge who holds a press conference against the Chief Justice of India, become Chief Justice of India, he is involved in sexual harassment case, and there is a compromise. How can there be a compromise in a sexual harassment case? Because if the allegations made by that lady were wrong, she should have been thrown out and sent behind the bars. If her allegations were right, then the judge should have been thrown out and put behind the bars. There can't be a compromise, but there was a compromise. And to crown it all, he becomes a member of parliament. So ethics becomes difficult to discuss. So I cannot comment on what's going on there, but I can give you my personal view. This is pure and simple nonsense that is going on. It is, to me, I'm sorry to say that, a very conscious effort towards a particular political end. And the tragedy is that a large number of us are buying into it. This has never happened in this country on this scale. And there are a large number of people who are educated are trying to justify what's going on. It's a tragedy. It's a tragic existence, but country has come out of much worse situations. My hope is that we'll be able to come out of this as well.
Thank you, sir. I see Mahi has raised her hand. Mahi.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mahi.
So recently I have read your book in January. It was really an eye-opening book. Sir, I have read the last statement that if you are reborn again, you would be joining civil services again. Sir, I'm glad even I wish to become a civil servant, but I have a question to you. Being a civil servant, there will be a less area where you can deal with. But being a politician or a CM or PM, you can even do good to in a larger context. So now you're already retired. Now, why don't you go into the politics field, or why don't you try to become the CM or PM?
Mahi, we all must understand our own self and then understand what are his strengths and weaknesses. Now, I did not become Cabinet Secretary Government of India, which is the highest post. I was Secretary Government of India, and someone asked me, why did you not become Cabinet Secretary? And in that answer to that will lie the answer to what you're saying. So there is a small share on that. मेरे मुखालिफों में जिक्र है कि मुखालिफ is who are opponents. मेरे मुखालिफों में जिक्र है कि शख्स काबिल है, लेकिन दो ऐब हैं इसमें. एक तो सर उठा के चलता है, दूजा मुंह में जुबान रखता है. Now, if you have those traits and if you know your limitations, I know my limitations, I'm very blunt. I would fail as a politician. Otherwise, I have nothing against politics. You are absolutely right. The domain will be much bigger. I will be able to do much more as a chief minister or somewhere. But I know my limitations. So what I am doing, Mahi, is I have not given up on becoming. I won't become a politician. But I have not given up on contributing to the society. And I feel that you can contribute to the society in a number of ways. What am I doing? I'm doing a number of things. I keep busier now than I was Secretary Government of India. I have set up a foundation called Nexus of Good. And I'll request all of you to visit that portal, Nexus. Just write Nexus of Good on Google and you'll be there. Where I'm trying to identify good stories, understand good work, so that I can roadshow good work, so that others can feel inspired to do more good work, so that it can be scaled. That's one I'm doing. The other is I'm trying to help people like you who want to become civil servant. I hold regular classes, web-based sessions with aspirants of civil service. I try and do that. Then I'm busy with my third book. I'm writing No More a Civil Servant. Then I write 2 to 3 articles every week, columns every week. So that keeps me busy. So I'm busy. The bottom line is not doing good to the world. The bottom line is to feel happy. I'm feeling happy. And
Thank you.
people like you. Imagine if I were the chief minister, I would never have time to speak to people like you. So I love this.
Thank you, sir.
Shreyas Lal, can you please have the next question from you?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Shreyas.
Sir, I have a very personal question for you. Sir, would you if you call a personal favor, would that be ethically wrong for you? And did you ever face that kind of situation in your life where you were really in a dilemma whether I should call in or not any personal favor?
No, I did a lot of personal favors to people. And I called it unethical. Why? Because whatever favor I did to him, I did to others also. If I select somebody for a favor and deny others the same favor, then there is a problem. So what I used to do was, there is something called legal, there's something called illegal. But there is a huge gray area in between where you can do things. So what I used to do is to evolve principles on the basis of which I'll do things which are not illegal, but not defined under law. And then I'll do this. Whoever fulfilled that, I did that. So I did. How does it work in government? Everything cannot be defined. So a lot happens as you work along. But you evolve principles as you go along, and you define those principles so that anyone who fulfills those criteria also gets benefited. If you read my book, Ethical Dilemmas of Civil Servant, you'll find many instances where, as you call, favors were done, actually.
Thank you, sir.
Nothing wrong with favors.
Preena Verma.
Good evening, sir. I'm Preena Verma from Maitri College.
Yes,
So I
Preena.
have a question for you that, sir, according to our socialization and how our upbringing has been done, so ethical and unethical can be subjective. So how do you decide that what is ethical to you may be unethical to another person? So how do you
You are-
decide?
You are absolutely correct. If you
Yeah.
heard me from the beginning, I myself said that the value systems change from individual to individual. Ultimately, you are the judge on what you want to do, and you should be prepared for paying the price for it. Now, you are the person who's going to pay a price. Whether you do anything ethical or unethical, or defined by you ethical or unethical. So, for example, I came across a number of situations where I did things which would have normally not been done by others. Ethics as a generic principle are the norms that are accepted by the society at large. Now, again, this is very amorphous. Ethics is not clearly defined everywhere. Take the case of hijab. Okay. Now, what is the current society defining? Current society defining it as wrong, no? Because that's why they are able to stop them. But as an officer, I would believe that it is wrong to stop them. Okay, so I am going against the existing value system of that particular area. I will do what I think is right and pay a price, maybe transfer. Take the example of what I did to that MLA making a case out. The ethos at that point in time was don't take action against the MLA who's very powerful. That was the ethos. But I decided to go against it. And it is not always that. There are a number of cases where I went with what the social system said. I would suggest you read my book. You will come across many such instances where in some cases, I conformed to what was the ethical value system. In some cases, I didn't. So again, in all those cases where there is this conflict, and mind you, you must understand the difference between my value system and law. If the law ask me to do something, then I will not get my value system going in. So if I have that Nexus bent of mind and become a civil servant, then I have a different value system. I either chuck that value system out. So for example, if you are used to getting late in the day and you join the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, there the ethos is that you got to, the law is, or the rule is that you get up 5 o'clock in the morning. You can't say I have my separate value system. I want to get up late. Don't join that. So you have to take a call yourself. And there will be a number of occasions where your own value system will be at conflict with the social ethos. You decide. I mean, I'm nobody to decide for you, but you have to take a call because you're going to pay a price for it either way.
Thank you, sir.
Avinash Yadav.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Avinash.
Sir, I have a different question. May I ask?
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
Sir, my question is about preparation. Sir, should we start after 12th in first year preparing for UPSC or from last year or after graduation we should prepare?
You know, UPSC, since I indulge in guiding people, is a very different exam. And I advise all students to start as early as possible, not preparing for the UPSC, but preparing for the UPSC. How is that different? To me, communication skills are critical to qualifying in the UPSC. And communication skills cannot be improved in 1 year. This has nothing directly to do with UPSC, but no matter how much knowledge you have sitting here in your head, if you're unable to write that out in 3 hours, and in an interview, if you're unable to speak them out, then what is this good knowledge? Whereas knowledge is essential, but critical to success in UPSC is communication skills. So start as early as possible to improve your communication skills. I did that after class 12. I had science side in class 12 and I switched over to arts. I couldn't write a sentence properly in English or speak a sentence in English or Hindi. So I went through a drill, which I tell all the aspirants what drill I did and what you can do, how to improve your communication skills. The fluency that you see today is not born out of 1 year practice. No, it was much longer. So whether it's English or Hindi, I tell them a lot of things. There is a full session on how to improve your communication skills. So communication skills is one. Second is improve your general awareness. Again, nothing directly to do with UPSC. If you become aware of your surroundings, if you start enjoying being aware of what's going around in the world, then preparing for the civil service becomes that much easier. More so now because the optional paper is only one. Rest is general studies. And in general studies, if you're not aware, if you're not analytical, if you're not coherent, if you're not expressive, you won't succeed, no matter how good you are.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So considering the shortage of time, I'll just take up questions from the chat box. Shivani Bhargava has asked a question that how do civil servants deal with instances where their safety or that of their family members is threatened by political or criminal entities if they continue to be honest?
It is tough. It is not very easy to do that, but you have systems in the government where security can be taken care of. I was posted in Lakhimpur Kheri and we shot down 6 terrorists, Sikh terrorists. I was on their hit list for a while. I took it differently. Suggestion was made to me to have security. I said, when I went out of that district, I said I would rather be anonymous than be known through security hanging around me. It worked. There are ways in which you can secure yourself. But of course, doing anything, there are risks involved. It's not that risks are not involved.
Thank you, sir. So Joydeep has asked a question about your life before joining the civil services. So he says he just wants to know how were you doing before joining the civil services? What were your aspirations? And after joining the IAS, which were the things you were able to achieve upon your level without the involvement of other upper authorities?
My decision to join the civil service was taken by my dad. Perhaps before I got consciousness. At around 10 years of age, when I started reading or writing, I saw a piece of paper where he really worked out the details of what will I study. Of course, I didn't follow exactly the same track, but the decision to join the IAS was my dad's. And so I made it into my own dream. And then fortunately, by God's grace, I got into the IAS. In the IAS, there was desire. Everyone has this desire to do something, Everyone. Who doesn't have this desire? And that is the reason why I could get things done from others, because I trusted them. I always believed that every individual wanted to do things. So I didn't require a danda all the time. I am a great believer in being a facilitator, on helping people and asking my team members, what can I do for them to do what they want to do, not what I want them to do. If I can generate that sense of ownership amongst my team members, my job is done. So give you an example. When I was posted as coal secretary, everything had gone wrong with the coal sector. And I didn't know much about coal. So I rang up a friend of mine and asked him, yaar, ye coal sector kaisa hai? Mujhe secretary bana diya hai. So he asked me a question. He asked me, Gangs of Wasseypur dekhi hai kya? So that actually answered the question. Scene was so bad in coal. And when I walked into that room, CBI was after files, after officers. Officers didn't want to commit on the file. It was very bad. But gradually I gained the confidence of my officers. I remember an officer came to me with a file and he put it up, I signed it. He said, sir, आपने पढ़ा नहीं फाइल को. मैंने कहा, तिहाड़ जेल हम साथ जाएंगे, हम अकेले थोड़ी ना जाएंगे. जो तुमने लिखा तुम भी भुगतोगे. Now, this was confidence building exercise. And confidence levels came to this level that we used to jokingly say, and I probably seriously say, that give us the Kashmir problem, we just might be able to solve it. So it's a question of confidence in yourself, in your team, and this comes through trust amongst your officers. And once you trust them, you delegate. When you delegate them, then they perform much beyond what you think you can. And so in the beginning, when I was coal secretary, I used to spend the night also in the office. It was so difficult. Within 2 years, I had only 45 minutes of work in the office. Because I had such a wonderful team, I delegated everything, they do their job, they did their job, and they were happy, I was happy. That's it.
Thank you. So we have next question from Harsh Tiwari. He's asking that, sometimes we have to be unethical for certain matters, like you've mentioned the case of SIDBI. So to what extent is it okay to be unethical? And just to carry forward with this question, a follow-up, like sometimes you do a certain thing that you think was ethical, but later on you realize that it was not. So how do you cope up from that guilt or something that builds inside a person?
No, I would not advocate an ethical practice anytime. There were occasions where I did something which I thought I wouldn't have done now. But that's how life is, no one is perfect. You keep committing mistakes as you go along. And you're prepared to pay a price for it. I would not advocate unethical action. But, if going back to the finance corporation that I spoke to MD SIDBI, it is a very marginal case. Because I'm not trying to justify what I did. Perhaps I will not do it now. Because the objective was not to do any harm to him. The objective was not even personal. The objective was the benefit of the organization. And I was not doing anything wrong in bringing to his notice that if he could do something for someone else, which was right, why can't he do the same right to me? The warning part may be unethical, but to apprise him of the fact that he had done the same thing to others and not doing to me, and what he did to others was also legitimate and legal, there was nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. So Vanika is asking that, if at some point of time you reach a stage wherein being honest can cost you losing your job or maybe your entire career, then how can someone stick to being honest or ethical under such circumstances?
Sorry, come again. Can you be slightly louder?
Sure. So how can someone stick to be honest under circumstances wherein it costs you losing your job or, just bringing an end to your entire career?
Give me a specific example and I'll respond. I would hate to believe that following an honest principle, you lose your job.
Varnika, if you're here, would you...
If there is a specific, you could come to some harm. That's right. That I agree. You can be transferred out. You could even be suspended. But I've yet to come across a single instance in my career or anyone else's career that he was thrown out of the job of following an honest path. Now, when I say that, I came to harm. It's not that. But let me tell you similarly, by being A dishonest person also you can come to harm. I gave you 2 examples of 2 chief secretaries going to jail. So there is a price to be paid. Nothing comes free in life. But I have yet to come across an assistant where somebody was chucked out of his job because he was honest. At least in government, I have not seen.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions. It was indeed a very good session. I would now like to welcome Lovejeet for delivering the vote of thanks.
Before he comes, I would suggest to the organizers that you can convey my email ID to all of you. Whoever wants to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me. I would love to have your feedback on the books that I've written if you happen to read them. One lady said that she had read it, but I'd love to have feedback. It would be worthwhile for you to read those. I look forward to your feedback.
Yes, sir, sure. Now I request Lovejeet for vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would maintain thanks are the highest form of thought and that gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. I, Lovejeet Singh, consider the occasion as an honor and privilege to extend the vote of thanks and put my gratitude into words. On behalf of Civil Society, Department of Political Science, Shri Guru Nanak Dev Khalsa College and all the students, I would like to thank Mr. Anil Swarup, sir, for being here and enlightening us with his pearls of wisdom and experience. Sir, it was indeed an insightful session for all of us. Your willingness to share your time and expertise is really appreciable. We appreciate you making time in your busy schedule to speak to us today and showing your gesture towards our college. And thank you, sir, for giving us pragmatic and field experience sitting in the webinar. I also would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the head of Department of Political Science, Dr. Inderjeet Singh, sir, and convener of Civil Society, Dr. Gopinath Pillai, sir, for his valuable contribution, guidance, and encouragement in organizing this webinar. I owe special gratitude to all the faculty members for their support, vision, and commitment. I must not forget to thank all the organizing team who contributed in organizing this webinar until the last days. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank all the participants for showing their interest in this webinar. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for making this webinar a success. And best wishes, sir, for your next book. Hope we are looking forward to read it as your previous 2 books are just excellent. And thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Now I request everyone to please switch on their cameras to take a group selfie. All right.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. All the participants are requested to fill the attendance cum feedback form before leaving the meeting. And participants who have joined via YouTube Live will also be providing you with a link. Please fill the form before leaving.
Please share the
email address.
link. Yeah, form link and as well as email address.
So he has posted this.
It is in the chat box.
Email in the chat.
It is in the chat box.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please share it in YouTube Live as well.
Thank you, organizers.
Thank you so much, Atul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for coming.
I request you all to engage more sessions with other civil servants in future.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely, Harsh will try to do that. Please be a part of the group and do not leave it. We'll update you regarding the session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being that active.
दी स्ट्रीम एंड कर रहा है ठीक है
हाँ, please, sir.